Welcome to Biggus Beekus. We're your hosts. I'm Randy.
I'm Joe.
This is episode 61 of our podcast, and the date is November 9th, 2021. What's new, my man?
Oh, not a whole lot. We did some playing.
We did. We had a good session, I think. You and the wife came in a tad late, but it was all right. We knew it was going to happen and had a perfect intro, and I thought we completed a full adventure. I love that. That's always very satisfying.
It is. Mars, why are you coming in here and coughing on air?
Dog's coming in. Want to say hi?
Yeah, he came in and coughed twice. I don't know if you heard it. Did you hear it?
Nope.
Oh, okay. So hopefully it didn't get picked up. That's fine. It almost sounds like a demon.
I sent off the prize to our winner yesterday morning. So Mr. Zach Risen should be receiving that pretty soon. Congratulations to him.
Yes, good job.
And I'm still working on a third. I think I'm going to leave the Pathfinder there and the Inferno. If neither one of them go the next time, then I may switch things around and try to offer up 3 new ones. But we still got a way to go. We got to get 250 subscribers on the tubes. And then,
well, we bumped up to 110.
Oh, cool.
So Mars, if you keep opening that door, I'm going to kick your butt.
So do we have any call-ins or emails or anything this week?
We do. We do have some call-ins.
Excellent.
Sherry thing. Share and share alike.
Sweet.
Oh, come on. Stop it. There we
go. Okay. Hit us with some sweet call-ins.
Interestingly enough, Dragon Magazine 48 was the first issue of Dragon I ever owned, given to me by a cousin, actually, because it had a top secret adventure in it. At the time, Top Secret was one of the games I was playing.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever owned a Dragon magazine that old, because except in digital form, especially with the CD that they, what did they call that? Where there was a CD with all of the 250.
Yeah, the first 250. Yeah, I think one of the first ones I owned was a random one somewhere in the 50s or 60s, but I know in the 60s or early 70s there was the Ed Greenwood did that thing on the 9 Hells where he went through and talked about the dukes below each Archdevil's lair, and I was utterly fascinated by it. Thought it was pretty cool. That's when I got way into it.
Yeah, looking at the older magazines, it's one, they're shorter, and two, could tell that it was early days.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
But there was definitely some good stuff, though. I mean,
good stuff. Yeah,
I've seen some good stuff in the early days for sure. Yeah.
And that was Jason from Nerds RPG Variety Cast. That was his singular voicemail for this episode.
Oh, okay.
Hey, this is Taylor of Clearixware Ringmail, calling in on my drive home from the grocery store, thinking about spells and how powerful they may be. Talking about Mudsword, with introducing Save or Suck and giving it a try. I think giving it a try is fair because the power of a spell in older school systems is counterbalanced by how few you get. It's very Dying Earthy. You have an extreme power, a very effective power, but it's limited. You only can do so many of them, and you have to manage whether you're going to spend that now or save it for a rainier day. I am reminded of running a group of coworkers through the Lich Way. Spoilers to follow. Near the beginning of the dungeon, there is a fake magician. He's been imprisoned here because the real magician figured out his horse hawk, and he bluffs his way through not knowing any spells. that worked phenomenally with my group of people. Most of my party was either old school or no school. That is, this was their first experience playing. But I was able to bluff that fake magician's way into their good graces, and they did not expend any resources trying to take him down for fear of the resources he might have at his disposal to take them down in return.
That is so satisfying.
So,
Oh, I imagine. He's got a little bit.
the moral of the story that I'm trying to get to, I like that kind of mechanic. I like having spells that can be or feel OP because it introduces more thinking. It introduces more opportunity for role play where the party may not just dive headfirst into stab. So, them's my 2 coppers. Delve on, guys.
I think you experienced that a little bit at the game Saturday because you kept saying, I got this spell, but I can't use it. I didn't even think about, the adventure we had was mostly fighting a lot of slimes and those sort of oozes. And Joe did you have sleep memorized?
Sleep.
Yeah. So that was kind of useless. And you didn't get to use, do much spell casting. But I mean, I don't think that was one where you were worried about how many you had. You just realized, crap, it won't do any good.
I was only able to use it on the one dude.
Oh yes, the guy with the claw.
Yeah, and it worked out.
I think I'm kind of with Taylor right now. I want to play it out. I don't want to be nerfing any spells as far as like making them much weaker. I don't mind changing them to fit the kind of feel that I want. But like, you mentioned sleep last week. Sleep's pretty powerful. Well,
yes.
Let's just live with it for a while. Let's see how it goes.
And you used it on the party.
Correct. It's good for the goose, right?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Hey there guys, it's John here from the Red Dice Diaries, just listening to your narrative/dice rolling episode. And I've got to say, yeah, I'm pretty much in agreement when it comes to preferring the dice to determine things, as a bit of an arbiter of chance and randomness. I forget who it was that said it, but I always remember a quote when things like this come up, where it's like, the story of a game is just whatever happens in the game. And it always seems to me, for right or wrong, that narrative games are more sort of focused on ensuring that a certain story type is created. Nothing wrong with that if you like that, but for me, the story is just whatever happens in the game. If you play characters or get killed by the dragon, then that's how the story goes. And the dice tend to lead to that result. So that's what I prefer. Anyway, I'm going to get back to the episode, guys. Take it easy. I'll catch you soon.
Yeah. I have to agree because I know for many years in my mind, I always struggled because I wanted this cool epic tale, with the highs and lows of almost like a novel or a movie. And you made a comment last week, Joe, that I thought was really good. It's really neither one of those things. And what makes D&D kind of fun is you just don't know. And it's great if the DM also doesn't know. It's fun when I'm surprised, as like, we'll talk about Mudsword, what you guys just tried to do with that ooze at the end. I was really shocked and I found it hilarious. And we'll talk about it. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, when you're left with dice to decide the fate of a particular action or whatever, you need to roll with the dice and just roll with whatever it comes out with. Whatever it rolls, you roll with.
Whatever it'll be. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey there guys, it's John here again from the Red Dice Diaries. When you were talking about wilderness encounters and whether they had levels, in older versions of D&D, the sort of random encounter charts used to be based on the dungeon level, whereas the wilderness encounter charts weren't based on levels, so you could come across a lot more dangerous stuff in the wilderness. But also, I think you make a valid point, you're not exactly just going to turn around a corner in a forest and be like, oh shit, a great white dragon, what's that doing there? Then But also in the original sort of older versions of D&D, they had rolls to determine like how sort of distant the encounter was when it took place. And obviously there's expected to be a bit of GM adjudication. So the GM would sort of roll the encounter. You find out it's like this greater dragon or whatever. You then have to sort of work out how to fit that in and how the player characters come across it. But yeah, the wilderness could be a dangerous place. Anyway, take it easy, guys. I'll catch you later.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of wilderness tables, they'll just have the monster listed and a number appearing instead of little bit better setup, or some suggested ones at the very least. And that distance from is a good one.
Yeah, and I've seen like, on the table, I remember when I was younger, I mean, I was just like, because all we cared about was fighting, right? Fighting was the whole game. So
Yeah.
when we did wilderness, I mean, I really didn't do it on purpose, but I'd be like, well, I wrote a pack of werewolves, says 4 to 16. Okay, that's what it is. And be like, oh, look, 12. We're second level. Yep, roll initiative. I mean, I didn't even think about it. I remember the rules that John talked about where there were rules for adjudicating how far away and stuff. And I simply said, I don't want to do with that. I'm just going to do whatever I want, which is not bad if my attitude wasn't, let's just fight.
Yeah. Whatever I want means they're right there.
Yeah. And I wasn't like, and to be honest with you, I admitted I've got some, took some unholy delight in killing Joe's characters and a few other people's at times, but I wasn't always like that. Most of the time it was just, that's what I thought should happen. I thought, well, we're playing D&D, you should fight the monsters. So, right. But I don't think that's necessarily the best deal.
There's some evolution over time on how you play for us, for sure. I don't know about anybody else out there. Please give us, drop us a line, email, call us on Anchor with how you may have changed your play style over time. When we first played, we were all like this in our little group. We were mercenary. We just kick in the door, take the stuff, don't really care. You go into town, slap around everybody because you're just dumb NPCs and stuff like that.
We're 8th level. You can't be tougher than us. I've read the DMG. Guards are only first or second level. That's the lieutenants. We can kick the crap out of all you guys. And you literally could if you follow the rules.
Right. So, we don't do that now.
Mm-mm.
I mean, if you're playing a heroic character, they're not going to be slapping around people.
No. And I remember even when you're playing a paladin, it's like, you said it before, an NPC is like, no, I'm not going to do that. Are you getting lippy with me? Yeah. Do you know who I am? and on the other side, I didn't help much because, I usually, your wilderness was deadly. And so when you got to a town and you were higher level, you're like, well, let's flex our muscle because I know we're not going to get to in the adventure. Randy's going to really push us to the limit. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of understand it. I do remember, though, thinking even early on, I was like, man, these guys, you're supposed to be good guys. Now, I didn't have things happen to encourage that often early on, meaning reward you for being kind, reward you for being helpful, get people that like you and want to do things for you. And so you guys were, roughnecks and come in and push people around and took what you wanted.
Right. It was like, I think I've made this comparison. It was like the WWF.
It really was. Yep.
We just walked around like we were, wrestlers, and you should know who we are and give us our respect. And if not, we'll throw you over the turnbuckle.
Pile drive you when you come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so I got my Hero Quest stuff today.
Okay. I wasn't sure what you meant in that line for sure by Hero Quest. If you meant there's like a Kickstarter or something.
Oh, this is a Pulse, which is a Kickstarter for Hasbro that I did last year early, like just when the pandemic was starting to get annoying.
I don't know why you're giving Hasbro any money, but go ahead.
Right. Fair enough. Well, I'll tell you what it was. It was a game. Well, Hero Quest is an old board game that everybody's, talks about how wonderful it is. I never owned it, never played it. All our friends talked about it. And at that time, my intention was to buy that and play that with my grandson to lead him into D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a pretty sweet deal. And I said, I know it's Hasbro, but what the heck, I'll buy it. It's Hero Quest. And I thought I would try it. And it came in. It's the Mythic tier It's like 190 bones or so. But dude, have you ought to look and see how much it's selling for on eBay.
Well, sure.
It's ridiculous. It starts at about
imagine.
$500 or $600. I mean, I could literally
Fools
turn
and their
around.
money.
I could just about triple my money. And that's like, and there's plenty of those get bids. There was one for $600. The first bid was 637. And I was like, wow. But the truth is, you're not going to get all those together. Those were for Kickstarters, the Mythic tier kick. You're not going to get that in the store. They're going to be broken down into pieces that you have to pay for. I wouldn't think it'd be $630 though.
Probably not.
For the core set and 3 or 4 expansions. But board games are high-end board games are $100, I think,
Right.
at least. So
Yeah, this is one of the things about Kickstarter, and there's something called FOMO, the fear of missing out.
yes.
And I don't suffer from it. I mean, not
Yeah,
really.
I do a little. I do.
A little bit, yeah. You can be a completionist.
I can't. That's my weakness. I'm a
Yeah.
completionist more than
Me-
something.
I mean, I just look at stuff and I'm like, well, I'm never going to use that. I don't really have any attachment to it. There are some things, if I had some spare cash, that I would probably want to get for nostalgia reasons.
Sure.
But I see a Kickstarter. It has to really, like, I'm really waiting for Eric July to start his Indiegogo.
Yes.
So as soon as he starts his and I have some extra money, I'll talk to the wife and hopefully be able to back him up.
Yeah. I hope you can do at least a little bit, Joe. I think it'd be
Yeah.
great if we're both backing him up.
Yeah.
That'll be cool.
But he's and I would like to back up some other Comicsgate guys too.
Sure. Sure.
But I don't have anything spare right now.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah. I mean, honestly, I just getting a little more picky about what I even want to buy anymore. One of our friends decided to back Mothership, and that sounded intriguing. But then I realized Mothership is just aliens.
Yeah.
And it's kind of woke. The company's kind of woke. But
Kinda.
even forget that. Well, whatever. Even forget that.
Yeah.
Forget the woke part. I was like, I don't want to spend, even so it's like $60 to do the decent set. I was like, no, I've got aliens. I don't need them.
No.
So yeah, I'm getting a little pickier. And also I think part of it's because we are working, however slowly, on our own RPG. And so in the end, if we really like it, which we better because we're making it, I don't know how many games. I mean, I can understand how game designers probably could possibly be a lot pickier. Because
Sure.
like I made a game that I really like. Why do I want to buy all this other crap? Plus, I'm
Right.
getting old. I
Mhm.
just want to play what I want to play. I don't want to spend tons of money anymore. I've spent plenty, thousands of dollars in my life.
Right.
So
Hey, write a note down for playing in the mud
Mhm.
about the idea I texted you the other day.
oh yes.
And
Okay.
we can talk about that. Since you were
Okay,
thinking
so-
it was kind of thin.
Yeah. So Whiskins.
So but here, Quest, how you got
yeah.
it. You got it.
I do have it. I haven't opened it up.
Oh, you haven't
yeah.
opened it up. Okay.
No, a lot of our friends, 4 or 5 of us Kickstarted, they're all getting their Mythic tier box. I think one of them got it yesterday, and me and our boy Tim S has gotten ours today, I believe. He said he was going to, and I think Patrick's getting his pretty soon, tomorrow or the end of the week. And I'll be honest with you, I'm going to try to play it with them. I don't know if I hang on to it for another year and it's still crazy expensive on eBay, I may sell it.
Might as well.
I mean, what the heck? That's a lot. That's a whole lot of money.
If someone's willing to give up $500,
And if I needed the base game, I'll just go buy it. My grandson wants to play that one day and I get a chance to do it, I'll just go buy the basic game from the store.
sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, Loth is coming.
You know what? I never looked at that article to see what the
Okay.
miniature looked like.
It doesn't look, if you click on there, you'll see it's selling it for $70. Now, I will say, depending on its size, that's probably a good price.
Okay, that's
look at
not
that
that's not the figure.
Oh, it's not.
There's no way. That looks like a digital mock-up. So it may still look like that once it's printed, but that looks, I mean, that's what it does not look like an actual figure to me. That looks
Okay,
that looks like a digital thing.
fair enough. But if it's really close to that,
That looks
guess
pretty
it-
nice.
I'm going to buy it. That's definitely, because I told you I only buy pre-painted minis now, and I tend to only, because I have so many of them, I tend to only buy the special ones. Now compare this Demon Queen to Jubilex. Okay, now
Mhm.
I'm tempting me. Jubilex looks like dog poop. Both looking pretty sweet.
I
I mean, I'd
wonder
like to
how,
see a little more. Oh, she's even got little spiders on her.
yeah,
I
I
hope
wonder how
I
big
hope
it
it
is.
looks like that. Yeah. Well, I think they're saying, does it say there? This many is is a D&D Magic the Gathering tie-in? How is, because they have right. They have Magic the Gathering D&D type. They have a setting for D&D now in Magic the Gathering. So I guess they're connected, which honestly, that's a smart move. I think that's a smart move.
Well, just be prepared for it not to look precisely like this.
Correct. And perhaps be prepared to be very disappointed. But when I see that initial mock-up, I have to admit, I'm going like, yeah, I'm down with that. That looks good. So check out the link that we provide. And I would love to hear people's opinions on that particular mini. That is very, very tasty, in my opinion. Looks good. Much better than that stupid Jubilex. And much more reasonably priced than the frickin' Terrask.
Yeah,
So,
it's still $70 for one figure is just, I'm not doing it.
fair enough. Fair enough. I'm a little more willing to spend it. So did you check the other ones out? Gygax and Arneson minis.
Yeah. I didn't note whether that they are for sale yet.
Right.
Do they just come with the book?
No, these feature on the cover. And now you can have them for $12.99.
Now that's reasonable.
Yeah, well, they're unpainted metals.
Oh,
and yeah, there you go. There you go. Unpainted metals. I still may get them because that's a kind of a nostalgia thing.
well, we can all get them in strong arm Pat into painting them for us.
Yeah. We need to get Pat in a headlock and you hold him down, make him paint them.
Right.
I asked for his book for Christmas, so I'm hoping to get that Game Wizards. I watched a video from, I don't know if you know Greyhawk Grognard on YouTube.
No.
He's an interesting cat. He does older fella, and he did a review of the book, and it sounds pretty interesting. It's about the lawsuit that split Gygax and Arneson and more details. And John Peterson does it, and so he's the guy that did Playing at the World. We've actually used several of his articles.
Right.
Dude does research. He's a historian. He gets first articles. He doesn't, what's it called in a research, first publications or first sources. He doesn't mess around. So I imagine it's pretty accurate. And it just sounds interesting to me. I'd love to hear how it really went down. And from what this guy said, neither one of them come out smelling like roses. That Arneson and Gygax both were a little bit butthole-ish about the whole deal.
They're just dudes. They're
Right,
just
exactly.
guys, just people.
100%. So, I mean, I'm not mad at anybody. I'm just saying, I know there are people that move into certain camps and say it's all Gygax, it's all Arneson. I mean, let's be real. It's got to be both of them.
And we both know of somebody that practically would probably kiss Gygax's feet if he got a chance. So
yes, we do.
we know of him,
Mhm.
not know him.
Mhm. So,
Anyway,
what do you think? What is this? So I had to look a couple of times at this last one. D&D Battle for Beyond is a star-studded new actual play series. So let me say off right up front, I don't know any of those people.
me either. That doesn't mean they're not popular on
No,
some
they don't.
level. I looked up the one fella. Well, I started looking up all of them, but it seems like only the I have it. There it is.
It's quite a diverse cast.
Oh yeah,
Because it has
it's
to be.
going to have to be. What's his name? So the most notable guy in the whole thing
Yeah.
is the Brennan Lee Mulligan. He
Brennan Lee
has a fairly sizable Twitter following at the very least. He's the
Okay.
guy in the back. You could barely see his head.
Oh, the white guy. Yeah.
White guy, yeah.
They should stick him further back. He should be
Yeah,
down
yeah.
on the ground.
The other ones, the way they note them here,
Yeah.
one is LA-based actress Josephine McAdam
Okay. I don't
with
know.
no credits. You can't look her up in anything. So
She's an
and
actress.
there's a gaming producer. I don't know how they're a star.
Yeah,
voice actor can be, but they're
Yeah.
usually fairly obscure. And then some, and then two or three of them are already actual play folks that are.
Oh, okay.
fairly
That's
well
what they are.
but
You know,
the rest of them are not. And then this whole the art title of the article is D&D Battle for Beyond is a star-studded new actual play series.
right.
One, they got to lose that star-studded word. That's fairly
Yeah.
patriarchal.
How is that patriarchal?
Stud.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
really.
Well, I'm white, and I don't even recognize my own whiteness and my inherent biases. So clearly, I need to be forgiven for not recognizing that.
No, you haven't done the work, so no.
I haven't done the work. You're right, dude. I haven't. That
Mm-mm.
makes me feel guilty. Sometimes, I'll stay up at night for like 1-2 seconds, fearing and worrying about that.
Right. Well, but apart from that nonsense, it says they're star-studded. No, they're not stars.
No, they're not. That's
No.
the thing. These are.
They're
I mean,
not.
look, they could be phenomenal voice actors as far as actual player. Even real. I mean, I know there's. I've heard. I'm sure there would be in a field such any kind of artistic field.
Yeah.
Talent doesn't make you famous. You can be incredible. I mean, I'm sure there are actors that are better than Johnny Depp. In fact, I would bet a paycheck. There's
Right.
actors that are better than Johnny Depp that will never be in a movie.
Right. There's a lot. There's some of it is talent. Some of it is being in the right place at the right time. So luck, persistence. There's a lot of different
talent's part of it.
Yeah, but there's and then there's how you look.
Yep. Have the right look.
Have the right look. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be like model quality good looking, because there's plenty of folks on TV that are not that. It's just
Right.
do you have the right look for what they're looking for?
Right.
But right. There's a lot of
you might get a chance to display your talents, and that could move you on forward. Sure.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, sure, it's an actual play that has the name of Battle for Beyond, D&D Beyond, whatever.
I don't know if that's supposed to be connected to D&D Beyond.
It is. It's backed by D&D Beyond.
Oh, okay.
So
Well,
of course they're going to put part of their name in there. Whatever. It's stupid.
But truth of the matter is, that's a new, let's call it new, few years old field where you actually make, Critical Role recently made the $9 million on Twitch or whatever. I don't give a crap. Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them. And if these people make millions of dollars, good for them.
Sure.
I can't get into it. I don't even know.
Right.
And to me, it's somewhere between actual role playing and just performance, and that's okay. I'm not knocking it, but it's not really just playing D&D.
It's not.
It's
So
it's performing at playing D&D.
right. So the reason I even brought it, because I brought this one up to you.
Yeah.
And I think Josh brought it up to me. So thank you, Josh. If you did, I can't
Josh.
remember. Wasn't necessarily the show itself, because I could care less.
Correct.
Knock yourself out, Battle for Beyond, do good.
Yeah, good luck.
I'm not going to watch it because actual plays make me sleepy, and
Zero interest.
But the star-studded part just made me kind of roll my eyes, and then I was like, "Oh, who wrote this? It's on Polygon." So obviously they're authorities unto themselves. So
Yeah, of course they are.
yeah. So when I read it, and it's a short article with nothing to it except
Big nothing burger.
listing out their names.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And then they posted a tweet.
Oh.
And well, while Brennan Lee Mulligan retweeted it and got a bunch of likes and whatnot because he has a fair amount of followers.
Mm-hmm.
When I first looked at it, okay, so it's gotten bigger since then.
Okay.
When I first looked at the tweet, it only had one like and one comment.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's more to it than that. So
oh, sure.
that
Dude, there's clearly lots. I mean, Critical Role, I think they have millions of fans. So,
but they're
that's-
clearly leaning on this Brennan guy's popularity because
oh, okay.
yeah, because on the tweet it's just a gif of him in various poses, and who cares? But apparently he's got enough popularity that it's driving a little bit of this.
Yeah, and apparently it's just not us. We don't.
It's not us. This is I'm not the audience.
I would think I wouldn't even call Critical Role star-studded.
No, it's not.
And because I mean, the only one in there that I know is Matt Mercer, and that's because he's a gamer and I'm a gamer, and he's kind of his name's bounced around. I don't know if any of them would be known by anybody that doesn't even. I mean, for example, if you have Tom Brady on your show, that's a star.
Yeah.
Your wife knows Tom Brady,
Right.
even though she doesn't watch football. My wife knows Tom Brady. Now, she probably still thinks he plays for the Patriots. That's beside the point. The point is she knows him. When Peyton Manning played, she knows him. LeBron James. These are stars.
Yeah.
Not just sports stars. Johnny Depp. People know them.
Right.
Okay. So, I think it's we throw those monikers around way too much, I think. I mean, because when we make Mudsword, are they going to say the new RPG by the star-studded authors?
No. They
No,
shouldn't, because
they
we're
shouldn't.
not.
They should not. These two bozos from Michigan made a stupid RPG ripoff of D&D. Please buy it.
But when this was posted, at the time they posted it, down the very end of the article, it said fans are already expressing their excitement online by saying this lineup is everything. One person posted that, and there was only the one post. There wasn't no likes or anything. So I was like, this guy or girl or whatever.
Everything. This is everything, Joe. I can't believe it.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the way that this person wrote it up in their article, as if there was anything going on at the time, and there wasn't. A fan expressed their excitement.
Everyone else is no. And you know what? It's probably going to be gangbusters. I'm sure they're going to do great.
They may not. I don't know.
And I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I wonder how long can this be support? That's a good, interesting discussion. How long can this the critical role bubble has to burst, in my opinion?
It could go on. It may not.
To be fair though, I also thought Magic the Gathering's bubble was going to burst. So who am I?
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
It just depends on how long people. So now that, and one of the I think one of the people in this has something to do with Critical Role as well. So I thought it was a spinoff, but I guess it's not.
No, it's not.
But as long as there are people who want this, and I don't know that there's any reason for them not to want it. They might get tired of it. Who knows?
Well, here's the question, right?
It's easy to consume. All you got to do is sit there and look at it.
That could be it. That could be something. It could be a little more. I mean, Critical Role's done 2 full campaigns, and they just started a third one. So maybe I'm dreaming. Now, would it be interesting when D&D 6th edition or their update, whatever they're going to call it, comes out? If that's not as well received,
I don't think that'll matter.
Oh, really?
I don't think that'll matter. I think at this point, Critical Role is its own phenomenon. So they could even probably switch. Well, I mean, I'm sure there is some.
They play Deadlands.
Yeah, I'm sure there is some, like, I can't wait to see how they do this game element in their thing. There's probably some bit of that going on, but I'm not sure how much, because I'm not plugged into that thing.
Right.
So
Well, we have friends that love it. We have several groups of friends that really like it. Several people, I should say. And I think they will stay with them for as long as they produce, because they really like stories. So now that I think about it, I think I may have to withdraw my statement, because D&D fans love stories, and they do tell engaging stories because they're actors and actresses. They can do voices, and when I say they do tell engaging stories, I could see someone enjoying it.
Right.
I don't, but You know,
But we're not their audience. There's other
We're
people
not.
that their audience, and that's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move into the main topic tonight, and we're going to revisit something that I know we've mentioned.
Just to
Nope.
belabor the point.
Absolutely not.
The reason I brought it up was the article so much, not the
okay.
show itself.
Okay.
It's a problem with gaming articles online that they're pretty much full of nothing, especially the likes of Polygon.
Well, Polygon and a few of the others are shills for Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast.
Right.
So then if they say Strixhaven is going to be the greatest book ever, something beyond the Witchlight is the best D&D book ever. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Stuff barely qualifies as a D&D book.
Right.
So yeah, whatever.
So game reporting sucks, is what I'm saying.
Well, they don't really report. A lot of them don't report. They just, the ones we see related to D&D, if you're not a butt kisser, you know, you don't get as much of the goods early, I guess. So we had I did that review, which should be coming up pretty soon. I found out that our buddy Chris, who did Ankur Kingdom of the Gods, Pundit reviewed it and gave him a decent review. Pundit's pretty harsh. I gave him a good review. I liked it. I'm looking forward to my book when I get it. But you know, I'm happy to do reviews, but I'm not going to be like, and I told Chris too, I'm not going to be like, just because I like you doesn't mean I'm going to just give a good positive review, even though I did, because I actually thought it was pretty cool. Whether it be something I would play in long term, I don't know, but it had a lot of elements that I think a lot of people will like for a science fantasy game.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway,
all right.
Shall we move on now?
Let us move on. Say my piece.
Right. We're not really blasting the guys that played it. We're just saying the articles in general suck when they come to things like this. All right. So now we're going to move on to the main topic. And it is a topic that we have at least discussed a little bit before. And I want to dive a little deeper into it. And I've said this, and I have an opinion, and I'm sure so does Joe, and we're probably fairly close, but maybe not. Is the DM just a player? That's the big question. So if I drop that question on him before we dive into the details, what is your initial response to that?
Well, I have said in the past, yes, but I think after some reflection, probably no. Not because there is a distinction between the DM and the other players.
Yes.
The DM does their thing, which is arguably a bigger thing than the players do.
I agree. I think at one time, I have probably even here, but I definitely before, years ago, me, I would have said, heck yeah, players don't really matter. I mean, that's me being super arrogant. But my point was, okay, look, let's sit down. If we're all going to be just a player, that to me implies equality all the way around. Do we all bring the same thing to the table? I got news for you. I've never played with a player that brings what I bring to the table as a dungeon master in quantity. Quality, maybe. They're probably much better players than I am DMs. I've seen that. Having said that, I'm just saying the DM's chore is higher. Now, depending on the DM, let's assume for this discussion, I'm saying a DM who does his job, right? Not a stupid DM who doesn't really try at all and just puts up a big pile of crap, right? Then he's barely a player. But I think, having said that, I'm with you. I think it's only our response. I make the comment, with great power comes great responsibility. This is more like, with great responsibility, you have to give the dude a little bit of power. Because as a GM, you do have, at our table, you have more responsibility than the players.
Right. I don't know. I don't know if power is the right word, but it's probably the only one. Let's just roll with it. I'm not sure if power is the right word.
Control, leeway. There's a better word. How about leeway? No. I
don't know. Yeah. Let's leave it.
Okay, we'll leave it. Joe says leave it. So
I've spoken.
And so I've kind of broken this down to the DM side, the player side, and I want to do a perspective, again, based on the additions. I think things have changed. And then sort of the golden rule at the end, which I think we'll probably come to. So I think the DM, because it's his responsibility, I guess some people disagree. They love to play. We talked about last week about those narrative games where everybody just comes in and the story develops. I think like a game like, I hate to even mention this word, Fate. We play the Dresden game where the character sheets are, minuscule in detail. and the DM has to kind of give and take between the players. It's very let's tell a cool story like a novel, you know. But if we throw that out, just stick with D&D. I think because he's bringing a big chunk of stuff for you guys to experience and be a part of, the DM has to set a tone, and I think a DM has to put investment into his campaign if he wants it to be, if he wants to get that quote unquote power. I would feel less inclined to consider a GM who just shows up and puts very little, you know, say, how much time did you spend prepping? On about 20 minutes. And it shows. Now, if it doesn't show, I'm cool with it. But if he shows up and he's always, and then, so there's a door there, but it looks magical. Wait a minute. No, it's just kind of glowing. How come? Oh, there's a light there. You know, he just bouncing around. That player because the DM has to put so much more into the game. I say you have to give him more leeway. And I think for me, you guys do. You're very generous with me, because I mean, you don't have to let me control anything because you guys are adults and you can do whatever the hell you want at any time. But I think you guys say, well, we know Randy's gonna put the time in. There's probably something going on here that's going to be interesting. Let's try to be a part of it and get into it. Let's not just, you know, be always fighting him every step of the way. Let's not be like, I'm not, well, you get offered this, the poor widow comes up and asks for this. No, we're not doing that. Okay. And then you're going along, and then the king says, you hear see a sign for the king that says, hey, I need people to go hunt these creatures out in the woods. Nah, not doing that. You know, you know. So I think that the word power, which is not a great word, I think the DM deserves a little more than
he deserves his due.
He does. And I'm not trying to put him up on a pedestal, because he has responsibilities too. I mean, that's what he's responsible for. And I realize I have taken the role of dungeon master. Therefore, I've chosen, if got 5 players and a DM, we divide all the work into, you know, say into 10 little pieces. I'm choosing to do 5 of those 10 pieces. Right? I'm doing half. And that's just a choice. And I get enjoyment from that. So I'm gaining something just from playing. So I can't say, ooh, Randy runs everything and tells you how to live and breathe. I do think good DMs with that power, they have to be able to say no, be able to be allowed to say no. In this day and age, that's a hard thing for some of the more modern players to hear.
Right. Well, people don't like no.
No,
but
well,
yeah.
I don't either.
Right. Yeah. The responsibility. Okay. Since we are always sitting down with our friends,
right,
it never feels like responsibility, and it never feels like power. It never feels like any of these things. However, if you invite your friends over to your house, you should clean it up.
Yes.
And if you go over to a friend's house, you should have performed your hygiene properly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you should be presentable.
Sure.
You don't have to, wear a 3-piece suit and all that stuff, but you don't go over there all smelly. So in the same vein, if you have said, I'm going to be the DM, you should have something ready that's interesting, that the players will enjoy playing. And if you're providing choices,
Mm-hmm.
you should provide enough meat with that choice that the players will bite into.
Correct.
Right. It's not just going to be a little flyer tacked up to the hitching post. There's going to be more to it. I mean, that might be it. And
Mm-hmm.
you might be able to just say, hey guys, I got this ready, this dungeon ready. And when we start, you're there. Are you all cool with that? And if everybody's cool with that and you run with it and everything else in it is fine, you're probably okay. But if you're if you're providing good choices that the players can bite into, then you're doing your job. And then the players do have to invest that much and realize that their characters would do things instead of being so contrary. So I was reading something on Discord today where they were talking about gold for XP. This is over on the Audio Dungeon Discord. Gold for XP as a way to encourage players to do things other than kill. And there was a big discussion about it. And one of the mile high points is how I got out of it was enticing players to do things other than saying, here's a reward for you to do it. So then you're not just being a mercenary. So if you're going to rescue the princess and you're heroic type characters, you should just want to go do it.
Yeah. And you notice too, like one of the things that I do, and you've seen it, when I don't want to pay you guys for stuff. That's not true, but kind of true. But when like the reward could just be like this poor little like one of the reasons you went to that temple to to the tower to be able to reconsecrate it is a kind of spindly little priest lawgiver. He's not a lawgiver. He was a priest of the god of Lohas. I've separated priest versus lawgiver. Came to the two lawgivers in the group and said, look, we have this problem. He described it. And you can tell he doesn't have much. He's like, and I described him how there's not much. He doesn't have much money. He's clearly just an underling. And they've seen him before, and he kind of gets picked on a little by some of the other priests. I try to play on your sympathies as relatively good characters. And I go to someone like your lawgivers who are your healers. And they can be, that can be very motivating if they're like, hey, let's go do this. And even if you're like because in the long story short, even if you're pretty mercenary, if you're like, say you're the rogue and you're kind of, I'm all about the cash, you're still going to go because, dude, there might be loot in there in that old temple. And if you're a wizard, you're like, man, there might be ancient arcane texts I could learn new spells from, So that would make sense to do that. But you don't have to, he doesn't have to present it always as like the church will pay you 50 gold pieces each.
Right.
I said something like, we would be very much appreciative of this. Right. If you would do that. And, that's when your poison mage was like, oh, yeah, well, let's go see how much they appreciate it.
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, I think you got to, as a DM, you have to show that there are advantages to get currying favors. There are benefits from being heroic. So if you just help the poor widow that comes to you out of the goodness of your heart, she goes, I can pay you my 2 gold pieces. And you're like, I'm a 7th level adventurer. What do I want? There's 2 gold pieces, but I am a hero. So I will do this. Don't worry about it. Keep your money. And you go do it and come back and you find out later on, she's well liked throughout the community. And the next place you go, the owner of the place goes, drinks are on the house today. Why? Right. I heard what you did for Flora. I heard what you did for her. Right. And you gotta engender that kind of stuff as a DM, and then players will bite more readily on that, I think.
The right kind of players.
Right, not everybody, and sometimes you got to read your players.
Sure. So this is along the lines of a good DM can, if you're bringing a good game and you're doing your job and your players, you don't really do. And this is me talking about the thread on Discord. You don't have to dangle too much out there. If you know your players, not necessarily the characters, you just have to know the players.
Yes.
You know the players well enough. It's
we
easy to get them in.
I could say there's an orc chieftain that, keeps dwarves as slaves.
Right.
That's going to get Joe's butt on that event.
We're going to go free those slaves right now.
He personally despises slavery. So I know his character is going to, if he's playing, unless he's playing a guy who's, I can't imagine Joe playing a guy who's a slave, or is he even okay with it?
No, but I might play someone who doesn't care.
Correct. He could be careless, but even your wizards would be like, oh, that's crap.
Yeah.
So, but you like playing a hero like I do. I think, and to me, that's kind of a power where, so you do that enough, then the players they go, well, okay, this adventure, I'm not sure what we're going to get out of this, but let's trust Randy on this. I bet there's something there, because in the past he's rewarded us, and I use that in quotation, with the free drinks, with a discount when you go to the adventuring prestige. People know you when you walk down the street. You got keys to an old mansion from the local duke, and you got a little base of operations. Yeah, it's old. Yeah, it's beat up, but you know what? One day it'll be a great base of operations. And so those sort of rewards, I think, can allow for that. I think when there's the no thing I was talking about. So when players, so the DM has to be willing to say, okay, in this campaign, someone says, I want to play a tiefling. And we know the current game we're playing in, that's not really an option, right? Not only have we not decided if tieflings even exist in the Mudsword, but in our world, it's basically not really that. It doesn't fit our current premise, which we still
Not as PC.
Not as a PC.
No.
And so, I really got this great idea. No. It doesn't fit. And players and if you give the DM the power, and you have to give it to him. I mean, because you can, like I talk about, and I'll mention this later, you can always do the ultimate, fight the power by walking, but I want to get to that later. I'm going to talk about walking, leaving a game. I think the DM has gained, the power. And when I use this word, it's more like your good graces. You're like, yeah, Randy's doing it. He's not trying to screw me out of playing my sweet tiefling warlock. He just doesn't, his game doesn't have a place for that. And if you look at the description, like, yeah, this doesn't seem to really fit. I'm just kind of wanting to play this cool guy because I saw him in the books and the stats look good, or because I had an idea, but it doesn't really fit. We have to be willing to do that sometimes. And I think you can do that as a good DM. It's a lot harder when we're going to sit down and play Player's Handbook 5th edition D&D. And that's how I sell it to a new bunch of people. And as soon as you show up, I go, oh yeah, no one can play tieflings.
Right.
Like the experience you had was that you can play a wizard, but no one can cast spells anymore.
Right.
I think, in fact, in those situations, the counter argument to that is if you say yes, there's a statement about saying yes and, like the player says, I want to play a tiefling, yes, and, or yes, but you can play a tiefling in my world, but he's not going to have the physical characteristics of a tiefling. He's going to just have the bloodline. That's okay, but that's diluting the world in my mind. And it's also playing, if you're playing a tiefling, I would think you'd want to look like one.
Yeah. If you run around looking like a tiefling in most civilized areas, they're going to run you out of town.
Yeah. Do you think this power, control, leeway, freedom granted by players, can that turn into something that's bad?
Well, it all depends. It can, of course, anything that's good overdone can be bad. So if you give the DM all of the ability to act, and you're just sitting there watching your DM tell you what's happening,
right,
the whole thing, then that's not really playing the game.
Or if I go so far to say, okay, they offer you 40 gold pieces each to go kill the dragon, and you accept. So you're at the dragon's cave, right? I start playing your character for you.
It's one thing to say, all right, so that we can get underway quickly, we're going to narrate this scene that gets you in front of the adventure,
right?
And here's how it goes. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing to do that, or this is how it goes, and then the players around the table might have an addendum for it, but you still end up at that end point where you're sitting in front of the dungeon door, because maybe you started late or something like that. And this is the thing, a lot of people have hangups when it comes to the story. They have hangups when it comes to immersion, and at the end of the day, you're sitting down to play a game and have fun. You have to give each other allowances. And if you're running late because life does that, and you need to cut something out of the game, the preamble is probably your best bet, unless there's important information that is tied to the interior of the game that they need to have, in which case you may not be able to just gloss over it.
Yeah, but the preamble could involve a little secret piece of nugget of information that will help you solve a puzzle in the dungeon.
Right. But we were in this day and age, in our current situation, we really should give each other some leeway and not be so stuck on story's important, but not to the detriment of the game as a whole. And immersion's all right, but it's not everything.
Yeah, I think with our play test we're currently doing, not to go too far into Mudsword, we get a separate segment for that. The idea, and that would be kind of that description I gave you would be kind of a railroad, would be a railroad for sure. we're gonna railroad a tiny bit because because we're testing things. So I don't want to have a big discussion all the time whether or not you're going to do something. Doesn't mean I won't allow it, but I'm not going to let you guys spend 2 hours or just say, well, we're completely avoiding this adventure because we don't agree with this. Now, if something happens and you decide the guy that wants us to do this is a jerkwad, and I played it in such a way that, yeah, he might be, then I can't be upset if you don't want to do it. And maybe he really is a jerk and he wants you to go in there and die. And since you won't do it, the rest of the adventure is you avoiding all the assassins he's sending after you because you wouldn't fall into his well-laid trap. Right.
Yes. Is that your email? Is that your email?
Yes, unfortunately, but I think I thought I had changed my settings. I'll have to do it again. I'll have to look at it here later. I think
do you need your email open at the moment?
I don't think it's open. Maybe it's just
is that a system sound?
I think it is, but you know what? No, hold on. Email's closed now. Good. We'll see if that helps. Maybe just shutting it down. Sorry about that, folks. Those dings can be annoying. I've heard them too. Have you ever run into a DM though that had the power and it was being used badly? And how did you handle that?
Well, there's 2 situations that I've talked about before here.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was what you just mentioned, where you're playing and you get the rug pulled out from under your feet when the DM says magic has been turned off and the wizard you have rolled up is now completely hosed.
Right.
So, I mean, you can say he might have had a good reason because he didn't know the magic system very well. But at the same time, if you don't know the magic system very well, maybe you shouldn't be running a game. Anyway, there's that. And then there's we had a DM. We had a DM that loved the Sword of Truth series of books.
Yeah.
And in that series of books, if you're familiar with it, there is a group of slavery is kind of prevalent in the world of this book, in the setting. And this group of women, I cannot remember what the name of them are, but what they do is they capture men and they enslave them sexually to them.
Oh, okay.
It's a magical process as well as torture and different, psychological abuse, and they have you for a long time, and then you become kind of their servant and breaks your will.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, he loved that and decided that all of the characters in the group were going to have that happen to them. So, and the way he had it done was just he narrated it.
Oh.
So there wasn't a battle where we had a chance of, winning and leaving. And it was in the Slaver series of modules. Mm-hmm. So in the Slaver series of modules, you get captured.
So that was his way of capturing you.
Well, no, he weaved it into the way that the module did it itself.
Oh,
so
okay.
In the module, things happen and you end up on a boat enslaved and they take you somewhere. Well, He just weaved into that this other thing, and he narrated it. This is what happens to you. You all have these magic tattoos, and if these ladies show up, you got to do what they say.
Man. So for those 2 situations, and I mentioned this before, a lot of players, especially when you check a Reddit or some comments, you hear a lot of people, especially today, I've heard it more than I used to back in the day. Man, if I was in that DM's game, I would walk. So how did you handle those? Did you walk?
I complained. But
I think that's fine. That's honest.
I didn't walk, but it didn't end up being anything because that campaign was abandoned at some point. So I imagine that he might have had something planned that he thought we would at the end of it, we would say, oh, that's why he did that. Okay, that makes sense. And thank you, or something like that. But we never got there. Mm-hmm. So it ended up just being I just screwed you guys over without you having any.
Was this a person you played with a lot?
Oh, sure. Otherwise, he's fine. He's just he gets really enthusiastic about that kind of stuff and just thinks it's just so great.
Right.
because
I've
the Sword
done
of Truth was awesome. So this must be awesome. And I'm going to do it to your characters because it's so awesome.
Yeah, I think you could probably name some times when I've done it too. I get enamored of some ideas. I think since my youth though, I've gotten better at not railroading that situation. If he wanted to do that, I would have weaved those women into a party that you're at, and I would make it obvious to the whole party. Wait a minute, we're all kind of getting played, hit upon by these beautiful women. I'm not assuming they're beautiful; they'd be relatively attractive. Every one of us, even my ugly half orc. So this is weird, but give you a chance. Maybe a couple of you go upstairs with them. Those that did that, I'm okay with saying you screwed up. These are like very powerful witches and you screwed up. I probably would give you a saving throw just to be fair, but I'd probably make it really hard. Save versus magic at -4, something like that. But the other situation with the whole, what do they call that? Bait and switch. Right, I'm gonna play wizard. Yay. No, you don't get any spells now. Magic is destroyed. Yeah, that's got to be a real stinker. Did you stay in that game too?
Switch characters.
Of course you did. That
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. I think when you're dealing with the DM like that, I think when you said I complained, I say bravo. That's what you want to do. And I would be very direct. Why are you doing this? Now Joe would do that with me. Joe doesn't hesitate. If I do something stupid, he's like, Randy, that's dumb. And he's not a butthole. I love playing with Joe, but if I do something dumb, he thinks it's idiotic. He goes, that doesn't make any sense at all. And I'd be like, oh well, tough crap. No.
We might talk about it and I might change my mind. He might change it.
Usually I think Joe, if Joe's upset, he's a good you're a good measuring stick when I might be getting a little bit too controlling. That's a weakness of mine. I think what's interesting was that other guy you played with, the one that didn't let you play the magic user, couldn't cast spells, was he a friend too? I think I know the flavor. Yeah.
It was a couple of different game groups and we switched DM duties now and again. And when it came up to his turn, he said, oh yeah, I want to play. I want to be the DM. Okay, cool. But he didn't know the system. So
he wasn't prepared.
I don't know why he would. It's weird. Looking back on it, it's the weirdest thing.
That's another quality too. I think a DM can get more leeway, give more grace from the players, call it power, if they know the system well. Then the players will be like, oh, well, he knows how this really works. He's gonna, and especially if he's seen to be using the rules correctly or fairly. I won't say correctly, I'll say fairly. Okay. What about the player side? And I'm focusing more on agency. What places should players have complete autonomy? The DM doesn't get to flex here. Are there places where they get to choose at their own, don't get in their way?
Well, it all depends on what you mean. I mean,
okay, so I set the campaign parameters. You can't play tieflings. You can play this, and this. You can play these things. Here's why the world's like this. Tieflings would be murdered as children because people would think they're witch babies, and they're not a thing. Or maybe there's no demonic influence in the world. I'm doing something where there's not demons, let's say. But I get all the parameters out. Make your character begin. What kind of should the DM? Should I step in and go, well, yeah, that's pretty good strength, but you got to drop it down by 2. Or I don't like how. I guess I have to lay down the groundworks of also how we're going to generate characters, or should the table decide that?
Well, as far as character generation, I guess that could even be in the DM's purview, because maybe he doesn't want to have really tough characters, or maybe he doesn't want to have really weak characters to start out. So at the very least, you say, hey, there's X, Y, and Z methods in the player's handbook, use Y or something like that. That's
not him. He's not overstepping his bounds.
Not necessarily. I mean, if he's saying you get to roll a D6 for your stats, well, they're 1 to 3 to 18. Yeah, I know, but I don't care. You guys are D6. Sorry about your luck.
Right.
Probably he's not going to have too many players, but, but I guess where the players are going to have the most autonomy is how they present the characters that they do have.
Right.
Because as the DM, you do have the world to present.
Yep.
And if you say you're limited to these classes, these, speaking of D&D,
Yep.
these classes, these races, this character gen method, and you might even restrict alignments. No evil.
Good. I want
So,
heroic characters. Yeah.
all of those things I think are fine for the DM to have under his belt. That's the framework that the players dive into and have their autonomy. You said I
Right.
can play a wizard, then I'm going to play a wizard.
Right.
The DM would be weird if he said, "Nah, you're not going to play the wizard. You're going to play the cleric.
The
other
dwarven
guy-
cleric.
The other guy is going to play a wizard instead." So sorry about your life. No, I don't think so. So within the framework you set up, there's probably a ton of autonomy to have.
Yeah.
Right. So you do town stuff. You go talk to people.
Right.
You decide what spells to prepare as a wizard, or what weapons to buy as a fighter, and all of these other things. So within the framework, you have the autonomy that's there.
And you don't do the adventure that the local merchant offered you 100 gold for just because the DM wants you to do it. Meaning you do have the autonomy to say no. I think you should. I mean, in most campaigns, as much as I can say with my busy schedule, I had two adventures already last week, but with much of my busy schedule, I generally have one adventure planned, but then I got to be ready to roll with the punches.
Right.
My thought is, if I don't convince the players through the story that this is worthwhile, then I've not done my job, and they have the autonomy to say, this doesn't make my rogue very excited about trying to sneak into the back of the church. I know there might be money, but dude, their lawgivers are powerful. This is crazy stuff. We're not doing this.
Right. And you do have some negotiation between DM and players, and between the world and the characters. The DM does need to convince the players to go.
Right.
And
or at least weigh out enough. This is true. This is true. This is true. This is true. Well, that's convincing. We should do that.
Right. That's what I mean. So you provide, you should know the players, like we said earlier. Not you should, because you don't always, because you might be playing in a game store. But if you know your players well, it should be easy to get them to go on an adventure.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to pull teeth.
No, key with the slavery thing. But, other people have different, goals in mind. And some players are super easy. I mean, they're like incredibly easy. They just want to play the game that you planned.
Right.
They'll literally they'll jump on the rails for you if you want to make it a railroad. They don't care. I'm here to fight orcs. You said we're supposed to fight orcs. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And that's cool too, because even within the story, you're like, my character is a character who likes to fight orcs. I hate them. So I want to go kill all those evil orcs. Let's do it. Can this player agency get out of control? Can it?
Well, it can. It depends on the tone you set as DM. If you're presenting this room and the player says, actually,
that's not where the statue is.
Yeah. Actually, there's a bookshelf over there with some ancient magical tomes. I mean, that's a little weird, because you don't get to do that as a player unless there's an agreement from the start. And if you give the players an inch, the players are going to take a mile.
They are
guaranteed,
right? So,
and we saw that in the 13th age.
Yes, over and over, saying you can have a little control. Oh, go crazy.
Right.
I guess we talked about last week, the nerve control. You got to watch the players. At least we do. Our 20 plus dudes and ladies that play. I mean, not all of them, but
no, there are some that push the limits.
Yeah, and it's okay. I mean, that makes you as a DM wary, makes you better. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Well, I went to live with that. And I try to live with those consequences. When I allow it, I don't do take backs. So, yeah, okay, Joe, there's a tome there. And there's prismatic spray spell in it. No, that's not necessarily in there.
That's where the DM needs to know how to say no.
Right. Exactly. Yes, but if you open it, it actually casts it on you.
With respect to your character and your character's background, the characters should have a lot of autonomy within the structure of the world,
Yes.
and within what's reasonable. If you say you're starting in this podunk village and everybody is from that village, and then somewhere along the line, I say, you know what? I have a long lost uncle that's that told me that I have the blood of the kings in me. Then maybe you're biting off a little more than you can chew, or the DM can say, yeah, your uncle told you that.
Right.
Can't
So I
prove
have
that
blood of
it's
the kings in
true.
me. Right. Yeah, that's what he said.
That's what he said.
He also said he was married to a gold dragon. So you believe that?
Yeah.
Your
So-
uncle was nuts.
So stuff, I think players, again, you have to give the players and DMs have to give each other some leeway and not be jerks about stuff and pull fast ones on each other. I mean, this is all about being friends if you're playing with people you know, and stuff to watch for if you're playing in a game store or at a convention or something like that.
Yeah. The only problems I've ever had, and again, from the player taking too much control, or two aspects of either the role-playing part, and I went down this rabbit hole one time when my wife was just starting D&D. We had a guy who basically decided from the get-go that he was going to be against whatever my wife wanted to do. And so at some point in the adventure, we never left the tavern until eventually he said, you got to choose to the other characters. It's him, it's me or her. And I had a group of, my wife was the only person I really knew at the table. These were all new people. And the other smarter players chose my wife. And afterwards I asked them why, and they go, well, honestly, because she's your wife. What are we going to do? Not choose the DM's wife? I mean, but that wouldn't have, I mean, the point was, it would have been a problem because I'm like, we're not ostracizing my wife. And, the guy ended up having reasons for that. And he never came back, and that was okay. We had equitable, we didn't get mad at each other. And the other one was when I was at Gen Con, I had a young man, and I do mean young. The table was in their 20s to 30s, and he was the 14-year-old whose mom dropped him off. And we were playing a game. Something happened, it was a Planescape Kryn mashup called Krynscape. And that's for Max out there if he's listening. I mixed Planescape with Kryn. And very beginning, the dude's like, the little kid's like, something happened and I ruled something. This is second edition. So I ruled something. He goes, that's not right. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, page 47 in the Dungeon Master's Guide says, and I quote. And so I let him do his little thing. And I said, guess what? I don't care. And we moved on. Because, so you can deal with, players who get out of hand, but just, being belligerent. I was older. I mean, he didn't, what's he going to do? He's a kid. But even if you weren't, I was like, another guy got mad because a powerful spellcaster killed him with one spell. I said, that's how it works. And everybody at the table, it was called Abi Dazim's Horde Wilting, old Tome of Magic. We were playing high level characters. They got a spell off. He got annihilated. He goes, oh, he had 92 hit points. That totally killed me. I'm like, yeah, no kidding. You failed your save. You're dead. And everybody at the table's nodding their head. Oh, you're screwed, dude. Because they know it's handfuls of D8s. Right. So I murdered him, and he got really mad. But I also said, I don't know, to me, and I wasn't trying to be a butthole, but I said, that's how it works, and moved on. And as a DM, that's how I handle players that get a little out of control. I try to be matter of fact and say, nope, and move on.
Right.
And I've never had a player be, got so mad that I can't think of a player, except maybe when we were really young, could have happened. They got so upset at my rulings that they left the table, but I'm sure it happened. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. So probably more likely that I blew up and left the table, but so yeah, I think that's all. Have you ever DM'd and had to deal with a player or a character, or even a character that just got out of hand?
Not really, but I haven't DM'd that much.
Fair enough.
I know the one when I was playing in our year-long the strange campaign that I ran.
Yeah.
The players were really pushing using tasers.
Oh, okay.
And tasers were not detailed in the book.
Right.
All weapons worked a particular way, but the way they wanted the taser to work is the way it seemed to work in the real world, which was you get hit with a taser, you go down.
Right.
I mean, you get hit, you go down. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I mean, that's practically true, not completely true.
No, but, rare can a
practically.
person, very few people can resist that.
Right. And I was like, well, you can't do that. You have
Yeah.
to say it has this much damage because it fits within the parameters of a weapon of its type.
And you knew in the back of your mind, if I allow this, this is Broken City.
Sure. Everybody will have a taser and they will rule the planet Earth with tasers, which is dumb.
Which they don't,
Right.
or they would.
The thing is also guns, when you get shot with a gun, you generally die. If you hit center mass, you're dead pretty much.
Yep.
Unless you're wearing a bulletproof vest, or and if they hit you in the leg, you're not going to die. But if you get hit center mass or your head, you're dead. So for the most part, when you get hit, you are dead. And so in the game, the way you handle that is most of the time with a gun, it's a graze, or it hit your it passed through without hitting any vital organs or something like that. So there's a way you can explain it so that yes, it does damage, but you're not dead every time you get hit with it. Same thing with a taser. You can explain it. If you roll really high on the dice and the guy doesn't have a lot of defenses, then they're going to do the iconic, shake and hit the ground, and but it's not going to be every time. So I had, and the players were like kind of insistent, and I was like, oh, we're not doing it like that.
Yeah, at some point you're like, that doesn't, and they don't. And I think sometimes players with their agency, and to be fair, this is their it's about their character. They had a really cool idea. Why can't it work this way? And especially what if they're a cop and they've used tasers and they start using all their jargon they know. And in my experience, this happened, that happened. I said, you do realize you're talking about particular situations, and it's not necessarily who you're facing now. And in Strange, you could be, what if you're facing a creature from another dimension?
Right.
Tasing may not affect him at all.
Right.
What if it strengthens him? You just doubled his strength. Good job. And the point is, it's got to be balanced, though. It's got to be reasonable.
You got to play within the scope of the rules of the game. You can't just make up a game element on the fly and then say, well, this sounds reasonable. Let's do it this way.
Right. But it also, you mentioned last week in early D&D chainmail, the only folks that got saves versus spells were heroic characters. The minions of the Orc Lord didn't get saving throws.
Not typically. You just rolled to see how many of them survived your fireball. You didn't roll to see how many of them took damage. You said,
no,
if they all fit within, if you hit the right size unit, they were all dead. There wasn't any saving throws, no rolling. It's just they're all dead.
If the Orc champion was in there, he'd get a saving throw. Maybe he came out burnt a little bit.
Right.
Something, and so that's a power thing that you got to be careful. I think at a table, and I have an experience with this, and this is not doing any fault of the players, really. It's my fault. I let the players, because when I first entered D&D, 3rd edition, first played it, I don't know why this happened to me. Maybe because the game was such a massive change, and I was used to the TSR versions of D&D, and things changed dramatically in 3rd edition. And for some reason, and remember, I had a problem with, I had an issue with meaning I didn't quite grasp how attacks of opportunity works, how the 5-foot step rule really worked, how it needed to be there for certain things, right? And I had a couple players at the table that were really good with rules, and they started saying, well, I would say, I think that's how it works. They go, no, not exactly. And I started finding myself, the DM, relying on them, which can be good, to rely on players who knows rules better than you. But the experience became me doubting myself constantly. For many years early on in 3rd edition, I wasn't comfortable. I wanted to get player consensus that what I was doing was right. And I remember my wife berating me, and I mean this in a good way. She was kicking me in my, proverbial nutsack. She was like, Randy, you're the DM. You make the call. We deal with it. And while I think there's an appreciable difference between letting players, I'm like, man, this is a weird situation. How would a taser really work? And say Joe uses the taser on his job. He's like, Randy, well, here's how it works in the real world. well, then we got to have a discussion. We could have a discussion and decide how it works in the game, but I don't just go, well, Joe says this is how it works, so that's it. I can't even worry about it.
Right.
And I think that's part of a give and take. And I think the players have to have enough quote unquote power, especially if they're in your area of expertise and you're in this murky area of the rules or murky area of the setting. And a player goes, well, why don't you do this? I mean, you're right, there's no tieflings, but couldn't you have some demon blood even if it didn't show? Maybe from the early but pre-cleansing era. And I could be like, okay, that's cool. If you just want it for a cool story effect, I can live with that. It's not going to have any kind of mechanical thing, and maybe later on it'll cause you more trouble. So I think that's a give and take part of it. This leads us into the edition wars. Do you agree with what I said there in the notes that I think pre-third edition, DM was kind of God, right?
Right.
He was the rules arbiter, made all the final decisions. That's all there was to it. I mean, it was literally in the rules. Gygax said, DM decides how it goes.
Right.
And I think that's how I think one of the reasons we're probably still, even you as a player, you kind of want to give the DM more leeway is because that's kind of been built into us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good thing.
I think in the end it is too. The DM is given power by the players, but it's a good thing that he has it because the game goes better when he has someone at least is controlling on the far edges.
Yeah,
So
you can't have majority rules or, we're going to play by consensus or by committee.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess there are some
Some
games
say you
that
can.
do
They
that.
do. Mhm.
There are some groups that like playing that way.
Yep.
And when it comes down to it, for those, I don't know, I would show my bias and just say those are all, story games and don't have a whole lot to do with D&D, because that's not D&D. There is story in D&D no matter what you say.
Right.
Whether it's something you participate in at the table at the time, or whether it's you telling the story of your characters to somebody else after the fact. But when you sit down and roll dice, things happen. That story happens. An emergent story, whatever you want to call it. That's how D&D handles story. It doesn't have rules elements that allow for that to be manipulated with current, social currency or whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
If there's any manipulation, the DM does it.
Mhm.
And if he allows the players to, they can as well.
Mhm.
But that's how that's handled in D&D
Well,
typically.
yeah, and like I said, pre-third edition.
Pre-third edition. Now,
Right. Third edition, I felt like because the rules were so tight, and we even mentioned we've experienced this with our Elysium campaign, we kind of worked sort of with consensus if we ever found a corner case of the rules. Because remember, our initial plan was rules as written,
yeah,
as much as we could. We made some changes with meta magic, but we tried to do rules as written. And I've heard of people who literally play that. I've read an article or a response on Reddit or whatever it could be, just them blabbering. Well, my DM on our table would never get away with that. The DM was wanting to, like, for a particular encounter, he was going to give this creature a special bonus because of his size or because of how it was, just because he thought and it wasn't unreasonable. They were in a situation where they couldn't get very far away from this large creature. I'm not sure if I'm right with this. And he was giving the creature bonuses that by the rules he wouldn't have. But the DM was like, dude, he practically fills the room. You can't move away from this guy. You're going to be easier to grab. And I'm like,
makes sense.
Yeah, I'm like, that makes sense. But they're like, you can't do that. And so we just told him flat out no. And I get it. You're all friends. You guys have to give me power. I don't just take it. But you also know exactly how Randy would react to that.
Sure.
Get over yourself. That's what's happening. Roll initiative.
Right.
Or there's the door. I don't really care.
Right.
And that's the second edition mentality. Whereas third edition, the rules were laid out so much, I started to feel a little handcuffed because it wasn't old school D&D was pretty wide open. There was lots of room around the rules that you could do what you wanted. In third edition, there was a rule for every situation and a situation for every rule. And so I think they started to handcuff the DM, especially with CR, which we've talked about. It's not fair to put a CR +5 creature against your poor party. They're 5th level and you're putting a CR 10 against them, or they're 3rd level and you're putting a CR, oh my gosh, a CR 9. That's not fair. And it's like, yeah, it's not. Maybe I don't want them to fight that dragon. It will kick their teeth in. They better think a little smarter. But that's an older school mentality. Whereas I think 3rd edition, while they had rule 0, I don't think they pushed it.
Well, depends on who you're talking about. I don't think
okay.
that perhaps Wizards of the Coast didn't.
Right.
But I think it was probably a mistake for the 3rd edition enthusiasts to let the rules in the rule book take precedent over the DM's authority over the rules.
Yep.
It's always been that the DM gets to, do their rulings.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying, CR is a piece of nonsense that they dreamed up that
Right.
has never worked as advertised.
That's
Ever.
not true. That's not true.
What do you mean?
I think I'm agreeing with you that
Okay.
you're saying, yeah, it does work sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, but it's overall,
No.
it does not. And also, I don't care what CR aficionado you care to put in front of me. The CR does not reflect characters with high stats and lots of gear.
Yep.
Or dumb luck.
Yep. It can't. And it doesn't. They said in 3rd edition, I remember Monty Cook said, we under CR'd the dragons on purpose. And CR was more of an art than a science. There were some creatures that clearly batted above their weight class.
And if you had a large party.
Yep.
Or a small party.
Yep.
The CR system never could account for those. So, so anybody wanted to whine about CR? I never understood. I mean,
you needed the GM there to make you had to know your players. If I'm going to run a game with 3 players using Pathfinder, using 3.x, and I limit you to a 15-point build, you're not getting tons of gear. I got to be careful. And I got to be careful more than just, they're 3 3rd level characters. They should be able to fight 2 CR4s. Not necessarily. They might completely kick the living crap out of the players. So they got a lot of paralyze. 2 ghouls could paralyze everybody.
Sure. Special abilities like that, you couldn't account for that either. So anyway, apart from specific stuff, the DM and the table, including the players, should be able to overrule anything that's in the book, really.
Absolutely.
You want to be playing the game.
Yep.
But if something looks dumb, or while you're playing, while you're playing, you said, we don't like that rule, we want to do it differently. Especially if the DM says, yeah, I'm going to do that differently. Maybe later on, we all take a break, and then we have decided, we've talked about it, and we all have come to an agreement that we don't like the way that rule plays out. We're going to do something different.
Right. And we did that from time to time.
So,
I know
some DMs don't really care what the rest of the table thinks, and I guess that's fine. But that's how we roll a lot of the times.
Yeah, it's too heavy-handed for my taste. It's just that players became belligerent. When I said that, I would say you can hit the door. If I had a group of 5 players that said, no, you can't do it that way because we said so, we disagree with your ruling, I'd be like, wait a minute, you could approach that a lot better.
Right.
Like, give me a reason why you don't like it. If it's just because the rules don't say so, you're not countering my argument that this room is small and this freaking giant with oversized hands can reach everybody and more easily. So I don't want to hear that. Give me a reason why, and, but if they come back but raw, how I feel about that.
Right.
Your butt can be raw for all I care.
Right.
Now, 4th edition, I can't speak to hardly at all. We don't really play that. I think 5e has tried to bring back the DM freedom to let them do more things. And when I say 3rd edition handcut the DM, I mean, if you just read the rules, there were so many rules that I think rule 0 kind of got hidden there early on, which is barely stated. I do think many of the adventure designers that I read, the older school guys, Monty Cook, Bruce Cordell, some of the ones, Skip Williams, when I read their adventures, they would say things like the DM may want to do this, or if he feels like this is too powerful, you might want to watch this. So their implication is the DM gets to decide how things goes, how it's adjudicated. But I don't think players, as the third edition got long in the tooth, when you read how players react to rules being changed by their DM, a lot of them lost their minds.
Sure.
How dare you nerf my cool power? Because it works like this every single time and there is no way to defend it. Or if there is, I got to do all these stupid convoluted things, and using the rule this way makes everybody want to pick that feat every single time. It
Right.
becomes a required feat. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I'm nerfing it because it's too good. And if you don't like it, pick something else. Because it just doesn't. And that arguments, the rules itself seem to encourage players to be a little more vocal about, and it's fine to be vocal about your displeasure with how the rules are being adjudicated, but in the end, you can't. I don't know. I don't feel like it's truly
It's not up to the players to adjudicate rules. That's the DM's job.
That's what
They can express opinions, and if you talk about it and you're convinced, that's one thing, but that's not the player's role. Not in D&D. Other games, that's different, but not in D&D.
I remember in particular when you first played the Magister in our third edition game, you brought that in from Arcana Evolved from Monty Cook. I thought, man, this guy's crazy powerful. And I kept telling every spell Joe did, I'm like, that's crazy. That's ridiculously powerful. He goes, Randy. He goes, it is in this situation. And Joe would make a good argument. Damage shield is unstoppable. And the next thing I know, next encounter, his damage shield is gone in one hit by a monster. I'm like, you're right. You were just fighting a creature that didn't do big damage. When it went up against giants, damage field basically just saved your butt. That's all it did.
Right.
It didn't make you the unstoppable force. Yeah.
Right.
The last bit is just talking about, so we use this a lot. I use the phrase don't be a dick, but I really mean we're just pals. So we should be able to work through these issues of power and control and stuff. I don't think I don't see us, anybody that we play with now. I almost can't imagine a situation where things would get so bad that someone would have to walk. Can you? Because that's kind of the ultimate.
Well, it has happened fairly recently with, some folks. ADM had an adventure that was very railroady.
Okay.
And very topical. Hit a little too close to home for folks. And
did players walk or they just complain?
Complained.
That's different. I mean,
but as a result, that particular combination of players and DM has not sat down again. So,
okay.
Yeah. And I think it's a direct result of that particular session. Yeah. Could be. It might be circumstances make it look that way, but
I think I know what you're talking about, but it could be circumstance too. Sure. So they may not want to come back in that situation. If you're not pals though, like I wrote like an online game, you just meet a bunch of people, play at a game store, new pickup group. How do you handle when those, how do you deal with the quote unquote power dynamics? Do you just say, I guess how we really do it is, I think about most people do it. You just show up and play and see what happens.
You also can lay it out at the very beginning as a DM,
right, which would be ideal.
Kind of like depending on if you're doing a one shot, then you take a few minutes. If you feel like you're using a whole session as like a session 0 thing, which I think is probably more than you need, but some people like to do that. But at some point you lay down, this is a framework. This is how I roll as a DM. And
you still want to do this?
Yeah. And then you play. And if people still decide that, they need to leave, then they leave,
And you also could begin DMing. And then if you can tell people are uncomfortable or they're getting a little perturbed, you can pause the game and go, look, this is how I run. And if something's bugging you, you can bring it up. I'll listen to you, but I do run kind of old school. In the end, it's my table. I'm not mad at anybody. If you want to leave, I get it. I'm not your cup of tea. That's okay. But if you want to voice what you're concerned about, let me know. And maybe I am doing something tonight that's not normally me. Maybe I'm being a little overbearing for whatever reason. And now I think I have an advantage because I'm a teacher. I tend to be able to read tables pretty well. I can tell when a person's squirming and not liking something, or when a person's bored and looking off with not just their phone, but I tend to notice the table. And I can get sidetracked and not, but I do. And I think that's a good way to handle that as from the GM side, is to bring that up. If it's the player, it might be hard. Would you please stop playing World of Warcraft while we're doing this? And they say, well, it wasn't my turn. And I'm like, well, I get that, but it seems like you don't really care at all to even be here. And honestly, it's distracting to me, even if you're not making any sound, because it is. Stop playing other games while you're playing this game.
Right.
That's how I do. And if you don't like that, I understand. Some DMs are fine with it. I'm not. So yeah. And we already talked about horror stories. I got to go down that road.
Right.
I think the golden rule, if you've got friends, remember your pals. Don't be a jerk about things. And the don't be a dick statement is really great if you're not pals and you're trying to become pals and you're trying to form a group as you don't know people very well. And the power dynamics have to be decided.
Right.
Yeah. Think we missed anything about these dynamics of, is the DM just, so in the end, let's summarize. So do we agree the DM is not just a player?
Correct.
Equal balance?
Correct.
But he's not a monarch. He's not
Correct.
ruling with an iron fist. You just have to give him a little bit more deference because he's trying to provide for everybody a good time. And so your good time may not be right now. Let players.
Right. And this is D&D. This is how it works in Dungeons and Dragons. And there's a few other games that outline it out like that.
Mhm.
I was going to say, if you say I'm an old school DM, or you mention old school, that's how we roll here. That's how I roll. Most people, I think, these days would know what you're talking about, at least to some general extent, unless they're very new at the game.
And they've only played fifth edition. They've only played fifth edition ever for 2 years, and that's the only experience. They might be like, I've heard about this, but I don't know what that means.
Right. So that would be a great way to cut through the crap. And then especially if it's online or at a game store, if you've advertised it, make sure you put that prominently. Old school. That'll solve a lot of problems.
That'll curate your group for you.
Right.
Oh yeah. So
but
anything else?
You were going to say in summary, you think the DM's role has more to it, so some deference needs to be made given that they have invested probably a bit more than the player has.
Yeah. Though again, there is the possibility that the DM is not, but even then, if he's an improv DM, he still might be phenomenal, and therefore he is providing something for you more than you are. He's providing all the key components, even if he's doing it off the top of his head or with just a handful of notes.
Right.
So it's not just time on task. For me, I can promise you, I've put in at least, well, it used to be, I would put in 1 to 2 hours for every hour I played, which is crazy. I've cut that down to almost equal time. And the other day, I think I told you I'd prepped a secondary adventure, not as well as I would like, and I'd prepped it in an hour and a half. So that's pretty rare for me to do that little time.
That's cool.
But yeah, it's just me.
Yeah, and in Dungeons and Dragons, it's spelled out. The DM runs the game.
I think that's true, and it needs to be. I think to a certain extent, you need to really take that as like a thing.
If you're not if you're playing a game where the assumption is everybody is on equal terms and all that, then you go with the assumption of the game system you're in.
Yeah, the DM is just narrating, and you guys are forming the story, and the actions are determined solely by you, the protagonist, and we're going to always tell it in sort of a narrative tale. Then okay, that could be different, where the DM is just will run one simple component. And I've heard of some games that are DM-less games. Has anybody ever played a GM-less game? That would be an interesting question that some more people called in. Where there is no, they're supposed to be, those are supposed to exist. A GM-less game. I don't know what that would be like.
Well, it'd be just a bunch of tables. I don't know how, I don't know. I've never done that before, so I don't know what the experience would be like. I would think it would be a little different, considering that the DM isn't necessarily just working off a bunch of tables, even if he has them
Right.
and is using them. Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Tired?
Yeah, well, I worked until like 6 o'clock. And,
Oh, long day, dude.
Had a long day. So
You emailed me early in the AM, so you're tired.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
anyway,
yeah.
Some DMs work with tables, but a good DM can use those tables as a springboard and doesn't just use them as a crutch.
But I feel like I've read about, at least the blurb on the game was, no GM. There is no one is a GM. Everyone's a player.
There is
So-
a game that we were both looking at early on. I think it was last year. Can't remember the name of it.
Ironsworn.
Ironsworn. That has a GM-less option. And there's a
Interesting.
bunch of tables you can roll on to see what happens.
I think
Essentially.
Jason at Nerds RPG, I think he's played that. I would love for him to tell me how that would work. Yeah. Okay. So I think we can be ready to put a bow on this.
Yes.
DM's the most important player. Sounds good. All right.
I'm not sure that's precisely what we said, but okay.
DM is king and everybody else is peons.
Peasant.
Peasant. All right. Let's slide into like it, love it, or leave it. You want to go first this time, or
Sure.
I can't remember. Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. Elephants.
Elephants. One of the coolest animals in the world.
Yes.
I think elephants are fascinating. I think I like their majesty and power. I also like their kind of weirdness with the crazy trunk and all the stuff they can do. And they're not like fluffy, petty bunny animals. Do you find you find a male all by himself, you better be careful.
You might.
be.
I mean,
He could be very aggressive.
I've heard some
Females with babies. Oh, you heard different things? I've seen it. on
Well,
some shows,
yeah,
but
yeah. There's the idea of the rogue elephant,
Mhm.
but if they're all out by themselves and don't have a troop or whatever the group of
Mhm.
elephants is called, I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Maybe. But if you have properly ordered group of elephants, and they do have an order to them,
Yes, there's a head one.
then you're not going to find that very much. I mean, you don't just go up to some wild animal and just expect
Right.
to be able to pet them. But
I'm just saying you get that mentality from Disney that they're just big fun,
right,
friendly dudes. Especially what if it's a mom and her baby? I'd be really careful.
right.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely, I would say I love them. I think elephants are one of the cooler animals on the planet.
Yes, I agree. Skyscrapers.
I could leave them. I can completely leave them. They just, like a lot of people, sometimes I'll see a big city, they're all like a side view of Chicago. And for a moment, I'm like, ooh, that's cool. Then I'm like, man, we got that metal all over the place, just covering everything up. And I guess because I'm old and I live a little bit I live a little in the country, not much. It's just not really my bag when it comes to, not a huge fan of skyscrapers. I'll go up in them. I'm not afraid or nothing. I've been to Hancock Building in Chicago. I would say, yeah, mostly leave them.
Yeah, they usually aren't very. They're usually ugly, just big, towers.
Yeah, and they kind of just get. And I understand people that like the city and it's kind of glitzy and all the lights up and they're kind of cool. But honestly, I could leave them completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Satellites.
It's interesting. Satellites. Well, they're really useful, right? We get to relay information through them, electronic and radio waves and stuff like that. So I would say
We get to be spied on by them too.
that's the best part.
That's
'Cause,
the best part.
I like Google, and so I really enjoy when my whole life is on display. And I teach too, so I'm out in front of people. So I kind of want everybody to know everything. I wish there was an implant I could put in my head so my thoughts could. No, gosh, no, we don't want that. Yeah, satellites are. There is that drawback. They got the sneaky all over the planet. Satellites are up, but I think I still like them as an interesting way to relay information. But you're right; they got a dark side to them. So
Technology is a dual-edged sword.
it always is. All right.
I think a lot of tools are though.
Oh, they are. What about this? What's your thought on nonfiction books? Nonfiction books. Do you read?
Oh.
Oh, just in general.
I like them.
Do you?
It depends on the particular one, but yeah, they serve a purpose. You can read about history. You can learn something. Yeah.
Okay, you like me? Me too. Well, in particular, the study of history. So nonfiction didn't have to be history. It could be anything. It could be like, it could be agriculture or whatever. But what about the study of history in general?
Oh, I like it. I think it's important. I don't know. I've heard different things like if you don't pay attention to history, you're doomed to repeat it. I've heard someone else say, if history isn't repeated, it certainly rhymes.
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of different sayings like that, but in general, we should know our history. It helps out. You don't always learn the lessons of it though, and sometimes history isn't a thing, because historians, like everybody else, have different schools of thought, and like every other branch of academia has, and over the last decade or two, had its run-ins with people who want to look at history through a particular lens,
Yeah.
and instead of take it at face value.
Right. Okay, this is a different topic here at the end. It's not different, but it's a slightly different question. The thief or the rogue in D&D?
Oh, you're cheating.
I am.
I think I'm leaning more thief
Really?
than rogue.
Is it the moniker or the job?
Probably the job. I think you could have more than one roguish character, but the thief has a particular thing it does. I think if you're going to have, I think rogue, I'd rather have a bard.
Roguish bard.
Yeah.
What a roguish scoundrel. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. That's 3.
All right.
How about take a little dabble in the mud here?
Yes, let's do.
Mud. And we played, we played last Saturday. It was an overall long session. Joe and his significant other missed about an hour and a half of the beginning, but nothing major. You got to the best parts of the game.
Of course, it was the part that I was there. Of course, it's the best part.
Of course, right. That's what I was thinking. Man, Joe showed up. I know the iterations of the rules are going to make some changes, but right now, what are your feelings at the table? Are the rules meaty enough to be fun?
I think so. I know we were talking about the spell selection for my character. He's only a 3rd level wizard, so only has 3 spells. So it's not current editions where you have cantrips that you can use all day and stuff like that. You have 2 first and 1 second level spell, and when you use them, they're done. If you don't choose, if your choice of spell isn't optimal for the location you're at, like it was last night or what was last time we played, you're going to twiddle your thumbs a lot. So I think you guys having light worked pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, it was very helpful. Yeah.
Worked well. And I don't think I used my second. I can't even remember what I prepared, a 2nd level spell.
Yeah. I don't recall. I don't recall you.
But sleep is what I had, because as a 1st level spell, because for several levels, sleep will be good and probably even the most useful combat spell for it. I'm thinking until 5th level, until we reach 5th level.
Well, at least because I think it's hard to remember. I think the orcs and the goblins and stuff, they still have some value to even the slightly higher levels than 1st and 2nd, because you can increase the number of encountered to where, I mean, when you're 6th, 7th level, you're like, yeah, we're going to fight goblins. I said, yeah, you're going to fight, I don't know, 30 of them.
Right.
Surprise. And you can only sleep so many of those dudes.
Right.
Right. And the fighters will be knocking them down every time they hit. But if there's 4 characters and you sleep 8, 10 goblins, that's still 20 more.
Sure.
That's 5 each if they decide. And they may just decide, well, swarm the wizard. So yeah, I think goblins and orcs and stuff can still be dangerous. And you had mentioned how the numbers might be increasing anyway last time. Do you think the PCs, and your PC in particular, and we've mentioned this a little bit, we were texting back and forth. I think we're going to want them to have more abilities. And by that, I mean, we're going to call them talents right now in our mind, whatever that means within the class. Do you think if your wizard doesn't get some more abilities, do you think he's too bare bones now? If he continues as he is and all he gets is saving throw changes, attack bonus changes, and more spells and hit points, is that going to be, do you think you need something else? And by need, I mean, it'll be less fun unless you can get some more cool things you can do.
I'm not sure. I used to think that you should have have a few things you can choose from, but you do get that with spells.
Yes.
So my thinking is that we play out with as few as possible
Spells
or extra abilities,
stuff. I agree.
and see how it plays out. We might find we're so used to third edition in Pathfinder, where the drive was to have an ability. You get a new ability at each level. Well, wizards were kind of like that already with their spells.
Plus feats.
Right, plus feats. So
Right.
you get the feats and you get class abilities. You get lots of different things on your character sheet. And that sounds okay, but I remember looking back and like you had half the stuff you never use. It's nice to see it on your character sheet, I guess, but you don't use it very much, if at all. So
Right.
it's kind of a waste. So sometimes less is more. Let's just go with less for now. And if we feel that there's a hole to fill, we'll just fill it.
I'll talk to you more offline about it, but I got an idea now, and I'll mention offline how we can maybe have a little bit of abilities, but not tons.
Right.
But anyway,
It's really, I think really it's going to depend on if we decide to try to balance the character classes.
Mhm.
If we decide to remain old school and have elves and dwarves and gnomes and whatnot not be able to have level limits and stat ability limits.
Right.
So if we choose against that, then we're going to have to rejigger some things.
Yeah.
So
that was some discussion afterwards about demi-humans. Some of the players playing the demi-humans were thinking, man, I'm going to have to switch characters at this level, or I'm going to have to do something else. And that's okay. I mean, because don't forget, we're play testing. So it may be that, a single class elven rogue may not be the best thing to play at 19th level. He may not be able to get to those stripes, but we'll talk about it more. You mentioned something though. You sent me a text today that I thought was pretty interesting. This might be, and again, I mentioned last week about us getting a mission statement, and we should really sit down and talk about this very carefully. You mentioned that what if we made the Mudsword world, not just the rules, or maybe not the rules, more of a place where this could be our shtick, a place where higher level OSR characters come to play, right?
right.
A place where, you don't have to just play levels 1 to 8. You can go 8 to 20. You can be 14th level fighter, and you can come to Mudswordville. We're working on names. Joe has a world name, but we're leaving that kind of open here. And there's stuff for you to do. Even if it's like our world has connection to the outer planes, our world has connections to massively mythological creatures that you can fight, or you can do other things with.
Right.
Is that your idea? I mean, this could be a thing that we could, because we talk so much about high level. We had a whole, couple of episodes about it. We love it.
We like high level play.
Maybe we ought to do that.
If instead of sticking around in the low levels and trying to rejigger the low levels, instead of doing that, it might be more our speed to pick up where it seems like most OSR games leave off. Even if they have the little 14 plus or 12 plus, they don't have additional stuff.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe other folks can let us know how the game is geared for levels beyond the plus.
And that idea definitely supports your statement of maybe we don't want to give special abilities. Let's see how these characters look with a very minimal amount of abilities, just their class bonuses, their shtick. Each character, the thief does his shtick, the lawgiver does his shtick, so does the wizard and the fighter. And then how do they look when they're 16th level? I mean, how can we keep that basic? And then we could do a new twist to make our high level something interesting. Make our high level something more than just incredibly complete brocane.
Right.
I can cast time stop and I win.
We have bigger numbers.
Yes.
Yay.
Your armor class is not 20, it's 30. Good job.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, if it's higher level, then there has to be bigger numbers on some level. But if that's all you got, then you don't have much extra. It's just same story, but just slightly bigger numbers.
Yeah, like the epic level handbook in 3rd edition.
Yeah.
As much as it was fun to read, it was fun to read because he gets plus 93 to hit. His saving throw is 52 plus 52. That's pretty cool. Well,
I'm sure there's a way to rejigger that so that you don't, maybe your numbers bump up a little bit, but something else happens so that you're more effective. So instead of just bigger numbers, maybe we'll see.
And I think to keep the framework of the skeleton of the game light as it is now might be a good idea, because I do have progression improvements on your saves. I have progression improvements on your attack bonuses. So I haven't really done much I haven't said anything about magic items yet, which is fine. I'm just using whatever I want and mostly making them up, as you've seen. I use my own creative juices to make the magic items whatever I want them to be, which I think that's probably the best way to do it anyway. But it'd be fun to see those characters get to 13th, 14th, 15th level and say, okay, what do they look like in this basic framework? Okay, so these pluses are kind of maxed out. What can I do to make them cool? And maybe in play, I'll give you a magic item or an ability, a secret, and you're like, hey, Randy, this should be something mages have a choice for at high level, something they can choose to do,
Right. And I was also thinking that where you were saying that a setting has to take into account that there's high levels around.
Correct.
Right. And I was initially thinking that there was some sort of magical compulsion or barrier that kept the high level folks away from the really squishy, normal folks. And I'm like, well, that's a kind of more contrived than I like. I think the better thing is more of a Cold War era mentality. So if this is a different place where high level folks go to retire, those high level folks still do stuff. Maybe just like when we as players got really out of hand, we made all the tavern owners 20th level wizard, fighter, clerics, right? Or whatever they were. In the same vein, there's kind of an undercurrent of knowledge amongst a certain subset of people that live here,
right?
That anywhere you go, you could come face to face with some high level retired adventurer who's just trying to lead a quiet life. And if you screw up his quiet life, he's going to end you very painfully. So you probably want to act with caution. So instead of having some contrived way to keep the high level people away from the low level people, they coexist. Sometimes they are known, sometimes they are not known, sometimes they act, sometimes they don't. I mean, if you go to some place and it's like Superman with his mother, right? A lot of his enemies, if they found out who his mother was or someone he cared about, like Lois Lane, they would try to use them. And it almost always went bad for them.
Yes.
So
then Superman's got a laser focus on your butt.
So if you accidentally march your orc troop through this village and murder the 35th level wizards gray-haired old
Right.
mom,
Right.
you
Yeah.
are going to suffer.
People are like, I thought that guy was dead. Yeah, so did the Orc King.
Yeah.
Killed
Now the
Orc
Orc King,
you know, and the Orc King's dead.
no. The Orc King wishes he was dead.
Right.
Yeah.
He's suffering unimaginably.
Right.
Yeah. Or
right.
we could, here's another thing too, we can talk about this, but I love the idea of maybe on that account, what if there's a place in the world that's hard to get to and only high level characters ever even hear about it? It's almost like a secret place that they go to together. And maybe initially it was meant to be a retirement community, so to speak. But what if it is? It's just another part of the world that has a magical barrier that can only be attained, can only be passed by high level characters, because you got to be able to do some really cool stuff. Maybe the key is casting time stop to get through this portal of blades that will cut you in half no matter your level. And so you cast time stop, you step through, and when you get there, what's happened, that's existed for however many eons the world existed. And maybe things have changed so that it's more of a dynamic, high level place, a la Sigil, Union from third edition, cities, places that are for super powerful characters can be challenged there. So what would an economy be like? What would a magical world be like? What would be a magical place like that it has been basically built up by
Right.
all super powered adventurers? That can
Right.
be.
I'm thinking that if you integrate them rather than segregate them,
Mhm.
you can probably have more interesting stories.
Sure.
Or you can
What
have
if you do
some,
both?
maybe not more, but you're going to have a certain set of stories you can tell with that, as opposed to
Yes.
having a just high level
Right. But I'm
restricted
saying,
area.
well, I mean, I'm saying that's a place that exists in addition.
Mm.
Maybe lower level characters get through that somehow, and they have to experience.
You could do it like you can't even, you're not even aware of it. People might pass you can
Right by it.
you can't, it may physically, perhaps the area that it is in appears to be an area of scrub.
Right.
Plants don't grow there. Nobody ever goes there. Maybe it's even a swamp.
Right.
And it's just not habitable by most people,
Right.
and nobody goes there. But if you're high level, you can perceive it.
Right.
If you're high enough level, you can just perceive it, and then you can access it. If you're not that high level, you can't even perceive it. So you don't even know that it exists. You walk by it, you walk through it, and you can't interact.
You don't interact with it. That's possible. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm with you. I think cooler stories is to have them fully integrated into the world.
Then you can have these rogue elements that sometimes disturb the status quo, and then the high level guys are engaged, or even the low level guys can have things to do with that same regard.
Right.
Something weird happens that they have to, at the very least, investigate. Maybe they have to hand it off to somebody else. There's something weird going on here that we can't handle.
Yeah. I don't want it to be like a video game where like, oh, we're going to the high level part of the world.
That's why I was trying to integrate it. So you integrate it.
Yeah.
You have the high level and the low level there. You just have
Right.
a Cold War. Maybe that's not the precisely accurate
Zones.
way.
I don't want to have zones.
No.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking too. This sounds too video gamey. Let's
It
not
might
do
be
it
too
that
video
way.
game. So yeah, we may not. We're just spitballing here.
Right.
All right.
So, but with that, you're going to have, we lean into the domain thing.
Correct.
So that there are domains, and the domains are either retired adventurers,
Mm-hmm.
or they might be active. It's just that most of their time is spent managing their domain, and every once in a while they go off and do stuff.
And there'll be a handful of adventurers that don't retire.
Right.
They live for the excitement and the glory. Now the chances are good that such an adventurer may end up finding excitement in the planes,
Right.
or in other worlds, in other dimensions, in other planets. Who knows? But yeah, I think that's probably a better approach. We'll have to figure out if we can. I want to try to figure out something unique, a hook that can make if we're going to go down this road, we got to have a hook that will bring people, hey, Mudsword world is really cool when you're 14th, 15th level, or it's got a cool element that no other setting does. So
Right. So instead of high level being kind of an afterthought, it's not really developed in a lot of these games. This is what we could do because we like high level. We might as well lean into it and roll with it.
other than say high level characters can fight, demon lords. Okay, great. Show me how that works.
Right.
How does that happen? How do you get to go to the 373rd layer of the abyss and fight Jubilex? Because nobody's buying that stupid miniature.
Right. And even so, if you go with AD&D, as long as not considering psionics, but those guys like Lolth had 50 hit points,
66, I believe.
66, and the dragons really had low hit points. And once you get to a certain level, they're cakewalk too. But so you don't really, they're not really geared. The games aren't geared for the higher level guys.
Right.
So let's gear them up.
Yeah. Sounds good. Anything else you want to discuss about the mud?
No, I don't think so.
Cool. All right, man. Well, if you'd like to support our show, please visit the many places you can find us. Our website is biggusgeekuspodcast.com. Click on the support for ways to give us some cash, or just tell your friends. We can be found at Twitter at Biggus Beekus, Facebook, MeWe, Odyssey, YouTube. And our email is thegeeks@biggusgeekuspodcast.com. If you want to comment on anything we mentioned tonight, we would completely invite you to do that. Share this with your friends. Let us know if there's another way that you listen or watch that we could support better. Please subscribe, like, share, and rate us in all the places that you find us. And how many YouTube guys do we have, Joe? 110?
Last count was 110. Let me see if that has changed during the recording of this episode.
Oh, wow. You can check it in real time, huh?
Real time. So we're at 110, which is great.
That is great. Thank you, guys. That's so cool. Man, 110 people. It's almost like a lot to us. Not a lot to most people.
Right.
All right, man. Well, this is Randy.
And this is Joe.
Remember, if you can't be big like us, then be geeks like us.